keep recording myself reading, and I don't add anything to it. And I have things that I want to say on here. I have commentary, I have things I would like to add, and then I would like to engage with the reading. One thing I've been thinking about lately is what the Grail, what the Holy Grail is. I read a comment on YouTube that sparked this line of thought. And it was a video on YouTube of a talk given by someone who has studied Henri Corbin's life. In particular, he was talking about Corbin's work with the Grail. And it was a good video, but one of the comments below said, "What is the Grail?" And one of the responses to one of the comments was, "The Grail is receptivity." I don't know why the Grail makes me feel enraptured. I could spend all day thinking about the Grail cycle, Parsifal's journey, King Arthur and his knights. Mostly that night that Parsifal goes to the castle and sees that procession with the Grail and the spear that has blood coming from it and the wounded king, and then wakes up and the whole thing has disappeared. And that quest for the Grail. It's something that pulls me. I can't explain it. It's a lot like the Gurdjieff work. I can't really take ownership of it or say I went out purposefully looking for such and such a thing. But I think that the Gurdjieff work and the Grail intersect in this way of receptivity. And there's this way where the doing, the action that I take, the choice that I make to give attention to my body, to give attention to how thoughts arise, not get wrapped up in them, not let the thoughts take hold of me, but notice them. Notice certain muscles in my body that seem to refuse to relax, and allow them with attention to relax and sit with a certain attention that I think anyone would give if, say, an important speaker was speaking. Say there is a scholar or a famous actor, an author that you admire and you appreciate their contributions, and then you get a chance to see them speak publicly. And then after the speaker is done speaking, you have a chance to meet that person, and you simply ask them a question that's been burning and their response is a good one. It's not just a few words, or if it is a few words, they're very good words. That attention that you give them, the ticking clock is not there. Your hunger pangs are not there. Your appointments, your annoyances, little distractions fade away because you're pulled into giving your attention to the speaker because of how much you value it. And I see that one of the qualities of the Grail cycle is the value of the Grail. It's invaluable. There is no, it's not a commodity. It's not something that can be bartered for in the marketplace, but it's an object of immense value. But it also could be something that is easily missed through the eyes of categorizing things by their value according to the world. There's that scene in Indiana Jones when Indy is picking the right cup, the right Grail, and he chooses the one that is beat up metal, dull, not a very interesting shape, but it's sturdy. And he chooses it, and it is the right one. And I like that as an allegory, because I think that we are that Grail. I think that Grail is actually something in us that we're looking for. And we will go to the ends of the earth. We will cross deserts and streams, talk to many people and ask many questions looking for that Grail. And we slowly have to wake up and allow ourselves to realize that that Grail is within us. We've been told by the great masters. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. So this receptivity, what it looks like, what it feels like, doesn't look like much. And to describe how it feels is hard, because I think it rises to a new level of feeling when the body and the mind and the heart are open to receive the ineffable, the mystery. When they're able to receive, I think the present moment might be the best way to describe it to myself, the here and now. In the here and now, when attention is given to it in this receptiveness, the mind thinks it's one thing as a concept of the present, the here and now, sure. But as you stay there still, unmoving, the present moment starts to vibrate. It starts to open up. It starts to become more intense. And that's why it's hard to say what it feels like, what receptivity feels like. I'm just going to say a random quote I heard from Anthony Blake, Sir Anthony Blake. I think he's a sir. Anthony Blake is a Gurdjieff student and writer, and he was on a chat with DJ Elliott, who's another Gurdjieffian and Rudolf Steiner student, and they were quoting somebody, and it really doesn't matter right now who it is. Could have been John Bennett, but it was, we think we are beings who do, but really it's doings who be. Really it's doings who be. That's a lot to think about. I think the way I see that phrase, that axiom, is that I can lose myself in a conversation and identify with the conversation and lose track of what I share, why I even joined the conversation in the first place. I can lose myself at a sporting event, get myself to believe that if my home team doesn't win, it's life or death. I could lose myself in that and really feel that way. I could lose myself in a romantic relationship and feel much more intensely that it is life or death. I could be shopping at a mall, and it's that doing. It's a doing that is to be. And so it's an identification with the doing, instead of this confidence of I am a being who does. I am a being who does. Well, prove it. What I see, the evidence, is that it's much more like doings after doings associated with doings. It's the doings that are doing the being for me. And it starts to fragment. It starts to become so fragmented. And it's a board of directors, or it's a room full of eyes. I am hungry. I need a job. I need a better job. I don't want to work today. I'd like to go to the countryside. There's so many things going on in the city. I'd like to see everything in the city. All these eyes are conflicting. They're conflicted. I never know which one's going to win out. And it's unrest. It's not peace. It's not the peace and serenity which I seek. It's not the integrity that I seek. the serenity and integrity that I seek in others, that I know has a magnetic pull. It's not that. And so I have no choice. I do have a choice, but the choice seems obvious to my thinking, that I must wait, that I must be receptive, that I must first acknowledge all these separate facets, all these separate egos, all these separate I's. I think, therefore I am, says one version of me. I think, therefore I am, says another version of me. I stay in front of those. I see them for what they are. And I simply allow for something greater to come in. Gurdjieff provides the illustration of, we are like a house full of servants. Maybe there's doorman, maybe there's a butler, maybe there's a housemaid, there's a dishwasher, but the master is gone. The master's been away. And the master's been away for so long that all the servants in the home jockey for position as to who is going to call the shots in the house. And the master must come home. And when the master comes home, then everything falls into order. So, receptivity is, I suppose you could call it a faith in there being a master that is away. Remembering times that feel incredibly lucid, incredibly transformative, and then the ego wants to take that and say, that's mine, that was mine. I can produce more of that if you'd like. You just have to put your trust in me. And it never goes the way as promised. And I never learn. And I'm given those moments of grace, those moments of incredible lucidity. A moment that's talked about in my last video with John Bennett visiting the what is it called? Why can't I remember? The Priory. Fontainebleau. These French words, I'll tell you what. John Bennett visiting Fontainebleau, and I think he's hinting at in his writing that he believes there was an opening provided. Perhaps Gurdjieff had a hand in that as a trained hypnotist, but somehow there was an opening. I think more explicitly what's shown in the book is that John Bennett was sick physically, and he believed he would die from this physical activity, but he was in a place where he had nothing to lose. He saw something in front of him that he wanted so bad, and that if he didn't get it, life didn't mean much as far as hanging on to his physical body. And so to push himself through these movements as he's seeing even others drop out, and him being the only Englishman left in this time, with Thomas de Hartmann and Gurdjieff doing these movements as he's sick with dysentery. And then right when that culminating point of fear of death meets I must be out of my mind for continuing to do this, yet I have no choice but to keep on going on. It broke into pure, unadulterated consciousness, pure, unadulterated being. And suddenly something that was more sincere, more true than symptoms of dysentery, symptoms of exhaustion, feelings of lack, feelings of worry, feelings of hurt, feelings of doom. That these were lesser, and that this force that came into him was trumping all those, and pushed him into this state of what might be considered genius, something beyond human capacity. Being able to understand people speaking in languages we don't know. Being able to incredibly lucidly understand an esoteric lecture. The ability to go and dig a ditch. The ability to want to dig a ditch for an hour at an incredibly fast rate for the sake of labor. At that point, he was craving labor, I think. And he said he just wanted to put it to the test, but I think that there was this drive of, I want to keep on churning in this labor, in these intentional sufferings, so that I stay in this place, because this place makes the hues in the sky more lucid and more colorful than I have ever seen them. Looking at a daffodil, the world of daffodils, the existence of a daffodil and all that's related to the daffodil is opening up, and it's speaking, it's dancing, it's loving, it's pouring out, it's exuding this eros. And Bennett was enraptured in it, and that's because he emptied himself out doing these movements. He emptied himself out, saying, what have I? I have nothing left. And it's that moment when there's nothing left, that it pours into him. And it didn't last until the following morning. He woke up and it was a mere memory that he couldn't seem to replicate. And Gurdjieff knew that this happened to him. And he said, you've been shown what it can be like, but you must work. You must work like the very devil. Work harder than you've ever worked, and you must want it so bad, you must steal it. He used that phrase. You must steal this thing. Interesting choice of words, especially when we're talking about receptivity. And I'm not sure how the posture of stealing something fits in with this receptivity. except in the sense of you only steal what you're desperate to have if there's no other way to get it. You're risking something when you steal. Les Miserables, he stole bread because he was starving. And look at all the consequences it brought him. So there's something archetypally courageous about stealing, or it's a statement. Stealing is a statement. I must have this. I'm desperate for this. And in that sense, I do understand. Because I don't think that we as human beings have the capacity to empty ourselves enough to the point that we need to, unless we understand it's something we must steal. And that way of stealing you've really got to be cutthroat about it. Because the ego or the egos that we're dealing with are cutthroat. They play games. They're so convincing with their talk. They're so convincing with their grandiosity, their flowery visions, and their whining, their martyrdom. Their self-pity. And so to get to the place where we are truly empty, to receive what is our birthright, we must be cutthroat. And it does mean being cutthroat with our body. It means pushing ourselves past the brink sometimes of what we think is sane or rational. These subjects scare people. Like since Gurdjieff, we've had incredible knowledge of abuse within cults, within ashrams, within spiritual communities. And some aspects of Fontainebleau could be featured on the news. I think the way John Bennett's wife reacted, future wife, Mrs. Beaumont, when she, I think they were married at the time, when she came on to Fontainebleau and saw the conditions that the school was working with. And we know that type, that it's motherly, it's doting. It wants the very finest comforts for its children. And succumbing to this doting mother is allowing our birthright to be taken from us. And I mean this all archetypally. I don't actually mean anybody's mother. I mean that thing, that person inside of us that comes in and says, look at these conditions. You must pamper yourself and eat the finest foods. And my baby should never be uncomfortable. Silk pillows, silk sheets. All these are metaphors. All these are this vision that we have, a deserving vision that we can have for ourselves, and a standard that we can impose on ourselves. that we can't take it with us. We can't truly have this. We can't truly possess. I think possibly there is nothing we can truly possess. A lifespan is very short. The older you get, the faster time moves, and you realize, you look back and you realize how many things already you can't take with you. We possess nothing. We're given things for a period of time. But there is something that lasts, that is eternal. And if we're open to it and we point ourselves to that and we work for it, we work to battle the very thing in us that either worries about us or is arrogant in its leadership. We must be cutthroat in battling those. And I only know this beyond. You can hear this message. You can hear this message in church, in spiritual groups, self-help. I only know this because of a physical sensation. If I didn't have that physical sensation, all this would be hearsay. And it's rather foolish to believe someone on hearsay. But I was pulled by something that I couldn't explain, both with the Gurdjieff work and the Grail. And I have an incredible amount of food to go through and digest and eat for the rest of my life. I could think, talk, write about these two topics and all the things in their orbit for an eternity, for as much time as I can imagine myself being in existence. And I simply don't know why. I don't know why. But I do know that because of that pull, I entered the Gurdjieff work after reading In Search of the Miraculous for the second time and getting my hands on as many Gurdjieff related books as I could, Maurice Nicole's commentary, John Bennett's books, and Beelzebub, reading and listening to the talks that Gurdjieff gave in Paris, I think Turkey. But I wanted to join a group. As soon as I finished In Search of the Miraculous for the second time, I wanted to join a group. There's a quote from Plato that says, all learning is remembering. And that's interpreted different ways. And I don't want to get too far on a rabbit trail of the ontology of being, but all learning is remembering is something I think of when I'm listening to something or reading something, and I feel that sort of like deja vu, but it's not as phenomenological as deja vu, but it is this pull, this eerie, I know this to be true. I've been here before. And that happened with the groups, and perhaps because it was the second time reading it. Could be as simple as that. It was planted in me the first time I read it 8 years ago. Didn't think much of it. Got really bored when it came to the hydrogen tables. I got really fed up with Ouspensky's dryness. But there was something about the Gurdjieff groups and their answers that Ouspensky was receiving from Gurdjieff that I looked it up. Gurdjieff, Seattle, Gurdjieff, Washington, Gurdjieff near me. And I had an interview with a teacher that I work with at his home on a Saturday morning. That was really something, just showing up to somebody's home and entering into their living room and sitting with them for hours. And then meeting as a group, doing sittings. Somewhere in this process, I received the grace of this sensation, that felt almost like a hand of electricity. Sort of doing that really quick. It was sort of like a wave. I remember feeling that when I was about 18 and I had a lucid dream where I was floating, kind of an out-of-body experience lucid dream where I was floating around my home and my mother and sister were there, but it was really fuzzy. But it felt really ethereal to be floating, and it was confusing but kind of freeing, and I was really amazed that I was just floating, levitating. And then I woke up from this lucid dream, and this sensation went from my head to my toes, and I can only describe it as electricity. And I asked my teacher what that is after I had this experience not too long ago. And he pointed out we operate on electricity. Our hearts are generating an electric current that keeps us alive. And so I keep that in mind. And perhaps it wasn't a phenomenon that occurred to me. Perhaps it was me being receptive to a phenomenon that occurs quite frequently, and is actually the reason I'm able to do anything. I can say that, but I really lack the ability to tune into that and feel that. And I'd be lying if I said I'd be lying if I said I wasn't chasing it. That I missed that electricity. And there are times after a lot of breathing and staying relaxed that I can feel it. But it's like a friend. If you don't call them, if you don't keep in touch, they're just not going to be on your heart. So, I'll end this time with a reading. And I'm going to pick a random one. 67. How about that? From The Reality of Being by Jeanne de Salzmann. 67. My true form. We have to find an inner order, an inner form. For this is the attitude of the body. For this, the attitude of the body must be controlled. In a body whose form is controlled, the inner form can be established. When I work in the quiet, I do not let myself begin without an order being established around my center of gravity. I hold myself straight and in balance, supple and without tension. It is not physical relaxation I seek, but to abandon my persistent ego, which is always eager for authority and has not yet recognized its master. I swear I picked this one at random. I must be seated not only in a different posture, I must be seated as a different person. When I am situated in my center of gravity, there is no ego that imprisons me. When I am situated in my center of gravity, there is no ego that imprisons me. What is necessary to understand above all is a movement downward, to become immersed again in the source, the wellspring of my life. I need constantly to return and submit to the force of life, the one true life of which I am a part. I need to let the reality of being emerge, to let the unity of what I am be created in me. I repeat the letting go of my tensions, of my ordinary I, which is in constant motion and does not like to be part of a whole. The chest, the shoulders, everything is relaxed. The concentration of force in the abdomen sustains the whole torso. The concentration of force in the abdomen sustains the whole torso. Everything is subject to the law of this inner order. I come to silence and unity in myself. I see that for my being to emerge, there must be a quality in my sensation that is equal everywhere, a unity of vibrations so that a state without waves can appear. Then I feel raised up, liberated from the form of my habitual tensions, which express the I. I am beyond it, aware of my inner and outer attitude as my true form, my personal form through which circulates my essence. I feel the force of life, free of all fear. I am no longer afraid of losing myself. I am. This force is irresistible. It is not my force, but I am in it. The force and I are one, provided I obey its law. This means a transformation in all my inner and outer attitudes. If I cannot practice and then transform my attitudes, nothing will remain of the impression touching my being once the experience is over, and I will again fall under the power of my ego, my tyrant. Each tension represents a movement away from unity and brings with it a need for letting go, and each relaxation contains a risk of deviation and brings a need for tension. Behind this law, the whole of me is in play, the balance in question at every moment. What I exercise is not my body, not my functions. It is the whole being. I do not look at my body from outside with my intellect. The body is the seat, the base of my life, inseparable from the whole. It must be perceived from within. I wish to trust life, trust this irresistible power centered in my abdomen. I seek an attitude, a way of being, in which my center of gravity is imperturbable. For this, the abdomen must be filled with the force of the whole body. If it is not full of energy, the body has no center of gravity and is overwhelmed from the outside. It loses its meaning as a bearer of life. The muscles below the navel are lightly tensed. This brings a certain concentration of force at this place, which needs to be activated by energy coming from all the parts. If my posture is right, the base of the trunk becomes solid like a rock, and the abdomen supports the whole upper body, which remains free. There must be no contradiction between the two. One does not deny the other. They are indispensable to each other. The force from above descends toward the center of gravity that supports it. It is necessary to relax the chest and not let it become tense. There must be no duality in the body. The neck is important. If one holds the head badly, the head and the trunk will be separate and will not have the same center of gravity. I do not try anxiously to do these things one after the other. I try to feel the unity in this attitude and to appreciate the sensation of unity. Then all distinctions between subjective and objective, inner and outer, are left behind. So long as I obey this new order and place myself under its influence, I have a new form. I see that the center of gravity is the seat of unity. When all my energy is concentrated here, I open to a new sphere of consciousness. I like how plainly she writes things. You know, we have Beelzebub, which can be pretty plain. One just has to want to steal it. One has to battle the ego, the impatient one. And I find that this is a little more accessible at times. At times it can also be a challenge, but it's plainly spoken and it's great food for thought. So drop a comment on the video if you have any thoughts of this. I get people interacting with likes and views, but I would appreciate more comments. So until next time, take care.